We can do this. What's up, gentlemen? Back again for a quick turnaround for an episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of BGObsession.com. This is kind of an unexpected podcast that we all would planned and hoped for. We had put the bat signal up not that long ago, saying be ready, because when the call comes out, we're gonna assemble and celebrate together as one. So before we jump into the, like usual, the quick intros plus a special guest and a new face. Top left is Paul. He hails as Canadian Hog. Top right is Bob. He hails as Neophyte. Middle left is Chris. He hails as Chris. Middle is Mark. He hails his own. Bottom is Boone, better known as John. I'm Derek. You can call me Silent Threat. And John wanted the distinct pleasure of introducing the new face on the group here.
So it's a lot of pressure on you, Andrew. But Andrew Hiller he's not a stranger. He's not a stranger to us. We know him as Burgold on the board. He's been like a core BG Obsession member for a long time. We even knew Andrew before that, although we might have had different names back then, different monikers. But Andrew is a very smart guy, and he made some comments this morning on the board that I thought were just so great about kind of the whole sale, the Snyder era, where the fan base, how we got to this day, incredibly. But I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Andrew, and then we'll get going here, because Andrew's a very humble guy. He's not going to toot his own horn, so I'm going to toot his horn a little bit for him. Andrew is actually an award.
Keep it PG-13, John.
Yeah, it's a family show.
All right. Andrew is an award-winning author, playwright. He's a reporter, a producer, and he also is on a first-name basis with some of the Muppets, but he'll have to explain what the hell that's all about.
Oh, I had no idea.
I can't help you with that part. But
even a Redskin link to that.
He recently wrote his most recent work, I believe, is a wonderful children's book called Pitter Patty, which I'm going to be purchasing for my granddaughter because I think she will love it. But I don't want to put out a spoiler alert on Pitter Patty. You'll have to buy it and read it to know what the plot is. But maybe Andrew can give us a link or let us know how to purchase that at the end of the pod. But anyway, thanks for coming on short notice. And like I said, Burgold, as we know him, he always has savvy, insightful things to say. But I just thought this morning you were like, I had not heard anyone put it the way you put it. So I'm looking forward to hearing you share some of that tonight. Anyway.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here, and an exciting day, an exciting couple days. And as a writer, I can tell you the coolest thing is when you get to start that next chapter, when the page suddenly becomes blank. Because we've been editing a long time to make a story work out, and that ending, that plot just wasn't working for the last 24 years.
We've been getting some shitty reviews for quite a while now. That's all.
That's what you call it. Editing. You call this editing. Okay. That's not what I would call it, but you know.
Well, we definitely need a new writer, or maybe this is a new publisher. I don't know how we quite work the analogy, but one of the two.
So we generally have an idea of a framework of how we're going to do these things, but I was kind of thinking, and I'm thinking out loud here in real time, if everyone I'm sure everyone has something to say, and I think we should just go around the horn and everybody say what's on your mind. Take a minute. No one's going to interrupt you. Andrew, if you're ready, man, and you're feeling it, why don't you just jump in and paint? If you're not, that's fine too, but paint a little picture and then we'll pass it on and just go around. I mean, I've got things I want to say, but I want to hear what you guys have to say too.
Well, I guess I'll begin with what I posted on the board on BG Obsession today, which is that I've been a Redskin, I've been a Washington, I've been a Commanders fan, whichever rose we name it, since I was probably 8 years old. And I remember I was in elementary school and I wasn't an athlete, I didn't follow sports. And there was this kid named Mike, and he was talking about how Washington was going to get crushed by the Cowboys. I didn't watch football, but I knew you were supposed to support the home team. So I stood up for the home team. I'm like, oh yeah, Washington's gonna kick their you-know-whats. And Mike said, oh no, he's not. You want to make a bet? and I made my first bet in sports. It was a nickel, and I didn't watch the game. And come Monday, Mike came up to me and he handed me my money. I'm like, this sports thing, it's not bad. You make money.
You make money. Nice.
And so, fans are born in a lot of different ways. But what I noticed over the last 24 years is how you lose fans. And losing fans is not an easy thing to do. I mean, if you look at the Red Sox, they survived 86 years of losing since the trade of Babe Ruth. If you look at the Cleveland Browns, if you look at the Los Angeles or the Oakland Raiders, if you look at any number of teams, they've survived decades of losing, and yet they kept their fervent fans. But as much as we're here and everyone listening to this podcast is still here, we know that the fire has shrunk amongst the younger generation, amongst our own generation. And that's not about winning. That to me is about having to constantly defend things that are tough. It's about all the different controversies that Snyder has sort of brought up through charging for games, for suing his own fans, for misogyny and being part of these scandals with the cheerleaders. And when you get to a place where football is not escapism, when it's not fun, then it's hard to keep your fandom. It's hard to keep your fire. It's hard to cheer for the guys, even though, honestly, if I look at the roster today, we have a ton of guys we're cheering for. They're good players, they're good people. And yet there has been this cloud. And so what the news that there's a deal in principle means to me is that I can actually get past that cloud, that there's a reason to possibly cheer for this team without having to qualify and make excuses. And to me, that's a pretty exceptional thing.
Amen.
Yeah, that's well said, man. And you're right, I mean, we haven't been driven away, but we're not normal. We're not we're not normal fans. We've hung around in spite, really as much out of spite, because we refuse to be driven off by our troll owner, immoral owner, who's a horrible excuse for a human being. So you're right exactly about that. And it's sad because we have board members. We were talking about this earlier today. We probably had 800 members, half of whom were active at one point, and it's just dwindled every year. And has nothing to do with our website, because we're friendly and welcoming, and we have a lot of great content. It's all about people are just fed up, and some of our former staff members are no longer actively watch the team because they can't. And I'm talking about Henry, who is one of my the guys I love the most. He kind of walked away from the NFL. James Golder walked away from the NFL because they can't feel good. They've got wives and daughters, and they can't feel good about rooting for a team where, with all the stuff that's gone on. And it goes beyond Washington, by the way. I think it's a bigger issue, but we've been the poster child for doing the wrong thing pretty much at every opportunity at the ownership level. And so I think you're right about that. Where are you guys at with it?
I've thought about 8 different times during the course of this afternoon is what I was going to talk about when I decided to open my mouth. And I keep coming back to my Redskins experience. The short version is when we moved to this area when I was 9 years old in 1969. And the first year I was really aware of pro football was in 1970. And my parents weren't into it. I had a buddy who was kind of into it. I just kind of fell in love with the whole George Allen thing at the very beginning. And it became such a part of my life. I've got a little card put away of something I wrote when I was in 5th grade, when I was supposed to be paying attention in class. And it was at the time, I think it was the 70 or 71 Skins. I don't remember now. We're like 8-4-1. I think this was the year that we made the wild card and lost to the 49ers out in San Fran in the wild card game. And it's this pencil drawing of a Redskins helmet, and it says, we're now 8-3-1, soon to be 9-3-1. And that meant something to me, and I've kept it. I'm now 62 years old, and I still have that in a box somewhere. I got to a point in my life in college where my team was that team. We were him. And we were as good as anyone in the NFL. We were as good as any sports franchise in any sport that I was aware of. And even at that age, I remember saying to people and being aware of what a gift that was then, and reminding myself in my late 20s and then when I was 30 and we were embarking on one of the great seasons in NFL history in 91, that this is probably a once in a lifetime thing, and you better fucking appreciate it, because there's no guarantees. And then we won that Super Bowl, and then Gibbs retired, and this will end eventually. I apologize in advance. I know I'm rambling now, but Richie Pettibone took over the team, and I had a buddy at the time who was almost as crazy about the Redskins as I was. And I remember the two of us actually saying, we're kind of ready for Pettibone's fire and brimstone. And, Gibbs was great, and, but he was such a nice guy, and we're ready for some, let's go kick some ass. And I remember thinking to myself, this is probably a really stupid thing to say, right? And then the 90s happened, and the team just kind of stumbled along, and I still felt entitled to a good football team because I had had it for most of my life up until that point. And then Snyder bought the team, and I kind of bought in at the beginning. I was excited about signing Deion Sanders, and the team went into that 2000 season as considered as a Super Bowl contender. And I was down with that. And it didn't work. And then it has been over 24 years, this inexorable, slow decline, both in the quality on the field, and then as I became more and more aware and was willing to admit to myself off the field, and goes to the kind of embarrassments that Andrew was talking about and that we've all felt and talked about. And I will admit that over the last, Chris, I got into the extreme skins thing, right? I was all over that. I wrote and published on the team website, and I was going to games and even covering games and all that stuff. And it was such a big part of my life, and I was proud of it. All the while knowing that there's something wrong, something stunk underneath all of it all. So the last, I don't know how many years, guys, 3 or 4 years, I have, and John will tell you, because he and I talk on a regular basis. We're pretty close here and out in the world, that I lost somewhere along the way, lost that feeling. I just lost it. And it wasn't intentional. I didn't push it away. I just sort of woke up one day and realized, when they lose, I'm mad for 20 minutes and I don't care anymore. I don't spend 3 days in a funk anymore. And when they win, I'm like, they won, but they're not going to win the big one. They're not going anywhere. So the last couple of months since it became clear that the sale was going to happen, I've ridden the roller coaster emotionally. I've been angry at Dan. I have been excited kind of about the possibility of a real future and being a legitimate franchise I can be proud of again. And then yesterday finally happened, and it's taken me all even up till now. I'm still working through it, but the feelings are complicated because I'm angry at what was lost. I'm angry that my son, who's now 31 years old, has never rooted for a Redskins team he could be proud of. But I'm hopeful. so I went up and I found my Monk jersey, right? Because that goes back to the very best of it. And then I thought about it for a second and I pulled this out, which is the new, which up until yesterday, I don't think I've worn this hat. I just haven't felt it. But today I was like, you know what? Maybe I can marry the new with the old and try to take a deep breath and hope that where we're headed is somewhere I can feel even a fraction of what I used to feel about this. And the chance to get to sort of think this through out loud with you guys and with anybody who might be listening. If this isn't a big deal to anyone who's listening to this, then they probably don't come from where I came from and where I think you guys came from, where it's such a part of our lives. And words don't do it justice. You either feel it or you don't. Today, I think I'm kind of feeling it, and I'm wrapping myself up in it.
Oh, wow.
And I'm ready. I'm ready for whatever comes next. I'm going to try to be patient, but I'm willing to jump in again. I mean, I'm 62. I figure I got hopefully 20, 30 years of life. I would really like to see a team that I can feel good about, contend for championships, and make these podcasts a hell of a lot more fun than they've been in terms of what we can talk about. So thanks for being here, guys. Thanks for listening to me. And yeah, that's what I got. Hail.
Very well said. It's very complicated. You're absolutely right. I think perhaps we could have had a second special guest this week and brought in a psychologist to help with it. I'm probably the oldest one here, and you get to a certain age, and the time speeds up. I mean, the time matters. I mean, I started sitting in the basement with my dad drinking, not me drinking, but my dad drinking Miller Lite, watching games on Sundays. Back to before when they were not any good. Before Vince Lombardi
The
came in.
Ramskins back in that era.
before Lombardi came in. It was a big deal for me as a kid when Lombardi was hired. And I remember so well, you know, Sonny and Billy and Charlie Taylor and Jerry Smith and Ken Houston, and on, and Pat Fisher and Chris Hamburger. And I mean, that's what I grew up. And I'm guessing that it had to have some kind of a psychological connection to being able to share those 3 hours with my father, doing the same thing or having the same interest. Because let's face it, to have reached the age that some of us have either reached or are close to, and to still have this organization with what the last 24 years has been like, still have a passion for it, we're outliers. We're just outliers. And there are entire generations behind us that will never understand it because they never got to experience it. Today, I felt a little bit of an emotional letdown. Yesterday was awesome, and today was just more things sinking in. I'm a father of a military career officer, non-commissioned officer, chief master sergeant. Okay,
So he works for a living.
and he works you for a living. But it was beaten in. It was beaten into me from a very young age that you are who you associate with. And I quite honestly have been embarrassed to say that I'm a fan of Washington's football team for at least 15 years. I'll just avoid conversations. I don't own any gear anymore. I have a Monty Coleman jersey that's 30 years old. That's the only thing that I own. I could no longer proudly, openly be a fan of the team. I could still be on the message boards. I still never missed a game. But I felt a little dirty, and I shouldn't have. And I blame that on Dan Snyder. And Charles Gasparino, otherwise known as Charlie Gasbag, the Fox Business reporter who's posted Snyder messages on Twitter, posted something yesterday that I have bookmarked, I have printed out, and I'll probably keep forever. Breaking. This is what Dan Snyder is saying to his haters today, in quotation marks. I bought the Commanders for $800 million and just sold it for $6 billion. Suck on that. And if those two sentences don't sum up Daniel M. Snyder, nothing else ever will. And he's cost me more emotionally than anybody in my life has cost me. And that's a little embarrassing to say. A little embarrassing to admit that. But you are who you associate with, and I'm very happy that I no longer have to associate with Daniel Snyder.
The irony, that is an awesome, just everything you said.
Yes.
That's spot on, Chris and Mark. I just wanted to add that it's the irony of him speaking about haters is I've never hated anyone until Dan Snyder came into my life. I'm not a hater. I don't hate people. I love people. I love you guys. You guys are my friends because of the Washington Redskins. I wouldn't know any of you if it wasn't for this team. And you're like a part of my daily life now and have been. But that's the sad irony of that statement, that despicable statement by a immoral mouthpiece, is that, you know what, we don't want to hate. You earned it. You earned every bit of the vitriol. And I wrote a blog, and I was kind of embarrassed to write that blog because it's full of vitriol, and I'm spewing nastiness. And you know what? It is what it is. That's where I'm at. I hate the guy. He's the worst thing that ever happened to something I loved, and fuck him and the horse he rode in on, as my father would say. That's how I feel.
You know what's almost worse though than the hate? It's the apathy. And not just the apathy from the teams that have left or the fans that have left. It's the apathy when you meet your rivals. It used to be so much fun to razz them and get razzed back and have the give and take.
It's like,
But
I
now
got
they
nothing.
don't care about you,
I got
or
nothing.
they pity you. I mean, to be pitied by your rival. I mean, or for them not to care about you. That's harsh.
I'm lucky because one of my best friends is a Jets fan, so I can still trash talk him, but that's it. That's all I got.
I don't need the team to win. I hope they win. I would love them to win, but that's not why I watch them. I watch them because they mean something to me. They're in my soul. But I need them to be respected. I need them to be something that I can be proud of.
Yeah.
And if that's the only thing that changes, and we continue to go 7-9 and 8-8 and whatever every year, I can live with that. But I couldn't live with being 12-5 and Dan Snyder dancing in his booth. I couldn't do it. I would, but I wouldn't like it.
Oh, what's been on your mind the last couple of days, brother? Because I know there's been a lot on your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other than O-line breakdowns and massive draft preparation.
Well, first off, my jaw has still not been picked up off the floor. I never at any point thought I would see this day in my lifetime. I apologize if I'm potentially repeating anything that anybody said, because I did lose connection there for a few minutes.
Oh no, we waited for you. We didn't say anything.
It's all
okay.
fair game, Paul. And if anything gets said a dozen times tonight, it's fine.
Yeah, it's all good. But I kind of figured, I knew a lot of what a lot of the reactions would be, and I felt as though we would have a lot of overlap in some of the things that we were saying. So I kind of wanted to take a little bit of a different approach. And my general reaction to the Dan Snyder sale has been the following. For me, a really, really heartbreaking aspect of being a fan of this team over the past 23 years has been my personal reluctancy to pass on my fandom to my own two children. I have two boys who enjoy the game. They love the game. They're 11 years old and 9 years old. And I never at any point have told them, you need to be a Redskins fan. I've always thought that would be really, really cool, that, you know, we can grow up together and potentially, you know, bond over this team, you know, and just cherish those types of memories. But it's something that never really came to fruition. So both my kids like football. My oldest is 11, and he basically had free reign to pick his football team. And he wisely chose that he would become a Kansas City Chiefs fan a couple seasons ago. My youngest, he's 9. You know, he likes the Commanders, but you know, he's not going to sit there and he doesn't really watch the games because, quite honestly, they haven't really given him anything to cheer about. That's all Dan Snyder's doing. The fact that I have not been able to bond with my boys over my passion and love of this team. I'm hoping that this new beginning leaves the door open for me and my youngest child to develop that bond over this team as they hopefully become more successful. Because quite frankly, Dan Snyder closed that door for so many years. And that's something I would never be able to forgive the guy for. Sometimes it's bigger than the game. Sometimes it's bigger than wins and losses. It's about making memories with people that you love. And I feel a new opportunity has been presented to us now with this ownership change. You know, and I'm hoping that that is the start of a new, you know, of a new era, of a new opportunity to build memories with people that I love, and just get back to what is meaningful and just get back to what we all love about this game. So that's my general take on it.
You're here.
What you got, Bob?
I wish I could pinpoint when my fandom started like Mark did. I don't have a point. It's just kind of always been there. I don't know how my dad got, you know, sucked into loving the Redskins, because his family is not sports crazy. His brother played football for the University of Virginia, by the way, John, scholarship athlete at Wahoo. But I don't know how Dad came to watch the Redskins, but that's how I came to watch the Redskins. And my first fight with my mother was over a Redskin game. We were playing Dallas and we were up by 3 touchdowns and we lost the game. And I was mad as hell.
Not
And
the
my mother's
game, is it?
my mom's wisdom, she says, what'd you expect? It's the Redskins, you know. And my mother is still that cynical, by the way, which is probably where I get my cynicism about the last 2 days, and I'll explain that in a second. But you know, I grew up with cutouts of guys on the wall of my, you know, before the days of fatheads, right? I had a calendar and I cut guys out of the calendar and I put them up on the bulletin boards in my bedroom. I had Dyron Talbert and Chris Hamburger.
Verlin Biggs. I had a Verlin Biggs autograph on my wall.
Oh, nice. I'm trying to remember who else. Kenny Houston was up there for a little while, and you know, I mean, all the guys from the 70s, the Over the Hill Gang, and George Allen, and I lived and I died. I remember being incredibly angry the year that we lost the division on the last day of the season and didn't get a wild card spot and sat home after having this amazing season. I don't remember which season it was, but I remember the anger, and I was angry for a month. You know, it wasn't a couple of day mad. It was, I
think we won 10 games that year and we didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah. I was a pissy little bitch for a long time. You know, I mean, it was bad. And like Mark, I go to college and we had 2 Super Bowls in the high school. And while I was in high school, one we won and one we lost. And then I go off to college in Texas. For those of you listening that don't know, I still live in Texas. I live in Dallas. So I am right in the big thick of the ugly.
We got Bob embedded.
Yeah. The man behind enemy lines. For a while, I wrote behind enemy lines as a blog too, right? But I came down here, and of course, you know, we were just so good. every year we were a preseason favorite. And that was at a point where the Cowboys were kind of waning. Tom Landry was in his final years, and it wasn't the same football team that had been in the 70s. And it was a really good time to be a Redskin fan in Texas. And then my brother came down here and spent a couple of years with me. The 91 Super Bowl we watched, we had an apartment together, and we watched it in the apartment together. And oh wait, I got to rewind, because the Denver Super Bowl, I lived off campus. My best friend on the site today, he and I've known each other since we were 8 years old. He doesn't contribute much because he has 2 small kids at home, and he's a lawyer, so he doesn't have a lot of free time. But we lived together, and we made the Super Bowl against Denver, and we had this crap ass TV in the house. And I said, you know what? I've been saving my money. And I went out and bought a brand new top of the line 26-inch RCA, which was big. That was a damn big TV back in those days, right? And we set it up in the living room. And by the end of the first quarter, I was watching it on a 12-inch black and white TV in my bedroom, because we threw a big party and everybody in the living room is rooting for the Broncos. By halftime, I had the living room to myself because the party was over for everybody but me and Brett. That was a great day. But my brother and I watched the Buffalo Super Bowl together with my then fiance and a couple of friends. And then the bottom fell out. And unlike Mark, I wasn't wise enough to realize that this kind of thing doesn't come around very often. I was a Laker fan at that point in time because of Magic Johnson, and the Lakers had been great for decades, right? And I had several friends who were Yankee fans, and I'm thinking, well, the Yankees have been great for decades. Why not Washington? And then the bottom fell out, and then Jack Kent Cooke died, and then it sank in. You may not this it may be over. Who knows what's going to happen with this? And I kind of allowed myself to hope a little bit. Dan bought the team, and he sounded like I think I would have sounded if I'd bought the team. He sounded like one of us for a while, right? He sounded like a fan. He sounded like it meant something. I don't know when I realized it didn't mean anything to him. I really don't. I don't. I've had some pretty lousy days in the last 20 years. I've been an owner here. I don't know what. You guys invited me to the ownership team not long after founding the place. And
we thought it would hurt less if there were more of us.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Misery loves company, brother.
But, there for a little while, I don't know, back about 10 years ago, I kind of disappeared from the site for a while. I got caught up in English Premier League football. I'm still an English Premier League football fan. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I doubt that ever would have happened if Dan Snyder hadn't just positively destroyed my franchise. So now we get to the cynical part of this. Maybe I've watched too many Charlie Brown reruns, but I keep waiting for Lucy to pull the football away. I'm excited, but I wasn't excited enough to open my 21-year-old bottle of Belvini tonight to celebrate. I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. Dan's ruined too many things for me in the last 24 years. And I keep looking over my shoulder, waiting for this one to get ruined too, which is, pretty lousy. I mean, you'd think he could give me the gift on the way out the door of actually not fucking this up. Right. But we'll see. I'm still hopeful. And I'm wearing my jersey. I broke it out, although I wear it periodically when we do these things. So it's not like this has just been hidden away. I kind of feel a little bit like, because everybody has said something tonight that I absolutely resonates with me. Paul, I've got the same situation with my daughters. I haven't pushed either of them to even love football. Forget Washington. I haven't pushed either of them to love football. Chris, I don't talk to friends down here anymore about being a Washington fan. And the closest I get to wearing Washington gear out in public is wearing my BGO gear, because oftentimes people don't realize I'm wearing stuff from my sports team, right? I can rep the site, but I don't have to admit that I'm a Washington fan. I know I'm looking forward to better days. I'm trying really, really hard to believe that the Harris group is different, and that they'll treat the team differently than maybe they treat other things that they own. Right? I'm a little worried about that. If I'm really wrong, I am. Don't get me wrong. I'm totally on the anyone but Snyder list, because I believe we'll be a respectable organization, even if we're not a winning organization. Unlike Chris, I kind of want to win a little bit. I would like to play on that final game of the season once again
I wouldn't
before I
mind.
die, So that's kind of where I am. I'm a little beyond cautiously optimistic, but I'm not stunningly overjoyed yet. I will be when the ink's dry. How about that?
I hear you. We sound like an AA group. And I'm Mark, and I'm a Redskins fan.
Yeah, we do. We do. And one last thing I want to throw out there. This was the thing that I talked to, I would call home. For those that don't know, my dad had dementia. We lost my dad several years ago to dementia, and I would call home. And during the fall, the weather and Washington were two of the things that we could still talk about. He still had enough presence of mind to have an idea what was going on with the football team, and he knew what was going on with the weather. And I would call home and I would talk to Dad about the football team. My brother and I used to talk about the football team, and I wish fervently that both of them were still with me to enjoy this experience, because both of them were very, very disappointed with the direction the football team was headed, and with how hard it was to be a Washington Redskin, now Commander fan. And I just kind of wish they were here to enjoy this. Thanks. Glad you guys are here.
So
Back
Bob,
at you, Derek.
before we
You're
get to Derek-
younger. You're
Go ahead.
younger than the rest of us, brother. But I'm really interested to hear how this all is sitting with you.
Before Derek speaks, because I know he's taking up the caboose here, I just want to throw two things at Bob. Bob, have you ever seen the movie The Bad Seed? It's like a 1950s movie with a little girl who's like evil to the core.
No.
So you need to watch it, because it'll reassure you, because at the end of The Bad Seed, after essentially causing her mother's death and killing off about 4 other people, she gets struck by a bolt of lightning and obliterated by, we assume, by the hand of God. So I think,
Spoiler alert.
I put that out there as that's probably going to be the conclusion if somehow this doesn't work out. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is Mitchell Rails. You guys all need to go out, and we're assuming that they're going to be the successful bidders. But Mitchell Rails, who gets no press at all, right? It's either Magic Johnson or Josh Harris. Most people couldn't tell you who Mitchell Rails is. But Mitchell Rails is just as rich as Josh Harris is. He's a DMV guy. He doesn't like to talk. Imagine that. But go out to the Danaher Company's website and start reading their mission statement and their philosophy and their core values. And I think you'll immediately realize that these guys are not Dan Snyder types of people. They're really not. And I just encourage you to do that. That's DNAAHER. Go look at their website and start reading about what they're about and what's made them successful. And I think you'll be reassured on that front.
Okay.
All right, Derek.
Well, one other, just to touch on that. Josh Harris is from Chevy Chase, Maryland.
Mitchell
So-
Rails is from Bethesda. They're both DMV guys.
Right. And Josh Harris has also been a minority owner of the Steelers, who have had exactly 3 coaches over the last 60 years. So he's not, completely alien to seeing what stability looks like. I'm not going to necessarily put the Steelers on a pedestal, but let's be honest, we would give anything to have the success level that they've had. And not that he had anything to do with it, but at least he got to see it. So that's why I'm
From the
firmly
inside.
believe. Huh?
From the inside.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, I'm 38. I'm not. I think I'm the youngest one in the group here.
You are.
With a bullet, brother.
I was 7, and I remember watching the 91 Redskins play the Buffalo Bills in a movie theater at Wintergreen Ski Resort.
Wow.
While we were on vacation. My mom and I were the only ones in the movie theater, and I demanded to get off the mountain and go watch the game. And we ended up watching
Good
the Super
choice.
Bowl in the movie theater. And like I said, there was maybe if I only remember myself and my mom being in the room, but there might have been a couple other people there. But I mean, I was 7, like I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so don't expect me to recollect something that long ago with great detail. But one thing that I will point out, and I know there's been a lot of venom towards Dan Snyder on this over the last 40 minutes of this call, and I have it too. But I think that I can legitimately say that the 7 people on this call still found a way to be impassioned by this team beyond Dan Snyder, which is why it was so. This is kind of a day that I never thought I would get to see. You want to talk about apathy. I was apathetic that I was going to never see this team run by anybody other than Dan Snyder. I don't remember Jack Kent Cooke as an owner. I know the history of him. I know after we started out 0-5, he was ready to can Gibbs, but Beathard talked him out of it. You've heard the stories of Gibbs that they were literally in the limos after the welcome home dinner or celebration, the ball or whatever, after the Super Bowl, and Cook opens the back door of the limo and said, "All right, let's go get another one." But I can't even sit here and act like I can vividly remember what it was like to have anybody on this team other than Dan Snyder. But this team has always been just ingrained in me. I can't root for another football team, not in the NFL. People tell me all the time, well,
Yeah.
why don't you root for another? I can't. It's just not possible. If I were to stop rooting for this team, I would probably end up ultimately in short order just not pay attention to football anymore. I can't do it. I can't choose to do it. It's just not physically possible. There's a reason why we have been doing this podcast for 3 years while Dan Snyder was still the owner of the team. None of us are really proud of the fact that he's the owner of the team. We just can't get past it. It's in us. It's in what we've been. It's in what we've been forever. One of my most proud moments of fandom over the last 20 years was going up to Canton and watching Darryl Green and Art Monk get inducted into the Hall of Fame in person. We took over a city while this jackass owned the team. So I guess I don't even really know what point I'm trying to make other than this fan base is rooting for this team in spite of Dan Snyder, and we have been for a long time. But I will admit, I have freely hidden my fan. Everybody that is close to me knows I'm a fan. I'm in my office where I'm sitting now watching the game on Sundays on BGO chat, screaming at an interception or a sack, celebrating a touchdown, doing all of those things, but I don't leave my house with a jersey on anymore. Not like I did 10 years ago. I don't advertise it. In my office at work, I used to have paraphernalia. I used to have Redskins gear up. I don't have that anymore. It's like multiple people have pointed out, you're almost ashamed of the fact that you root for this, not because of the team, but because of the guy that owns the team. I've got 2 daughters. Both of them have Nationals t-shirts. Both of them wear Nationals t-shirts. One of them was wearing them on the bed tonight as a sleeping shirt. They do not have any Commanders gear. That's going to change now. I'll say that. I didn't buy this hat or one of the 6 other hats that I've got behind me with with Commanders logo on it. I've had it. I just don't wear it. When we're doing the pod, I'm usually wearing like a Legend of Taylor Heineke t-shirt or the Culture is Damn Good t-shirt. Something that relates to the team, but it does not support the brand. And that changed yesterday. Like, I got up this morning and I came home from work this afternoon, took a shower, I threw on a Commander shirt. It was the first time I had worn that shirt out of the house since I got it. And I didn't even pay for it. It was a gift. So it was just, I haven't even wrapped my head around it because I can't even imagine what it's like to not have him as the owner of this team. It's 24 years of my 38-year life, he was the owner of the football team that I was so impassioned about. I couldn't walk away from, but I felt guilty rooting for. I don't know how else to put it.
Derek, I've been amazed and thought about this often over the last dozen, I don't know, 20 years, whatever it's been, but that in my case, and I know Bob and John and Chris and Andrew, and I think Paul, who's a little bit younger than we are, but we all came by our fandom in a time, well, our Redskins fandom in a time when they were the team. I mean, it was not surprising to be a Redskins fan back then. I look at guys who didn't have that, like you, who have the passion to be involved and to live and die with it. I'm not sure that I would have been able to do what you've done.
Oh, I know I wouldn't have. I know I
That's
wouldn't
a
have.
great point, man. I mean, and that's what I feel most excited about, because not to say that a new owner comes in and we're all of a sudden going to be a perennial playoff team.
Mm-mm.
I think that could happen. I think we've got a great roster, and I think it could happen. Anything can happen. But the fact that guys like Derek and even younger guys and Derek have and young women have like got themselves involved and somehow committed and haven't had any positive return. I mean, it's God bless those people, man. I don't know how they do it.
I got into a conversation with someone on Twitter because it's been dwindling. It honestly, this podcast is a lot of the reason why I've still been impassioned about the team. I'm not even going to lie about it. This podcast has been going on. I think we're in our mid-30s of number of episodes.
No, we're almost at 80.
Jesus Christ.
We've been at it.
But my point with that, it's a lot to keep me in it, because this is the bond that I've developed with this team is well beyond the on the field product. The on the field product is secondary at this point. And I don't mean that I don't want them to win, but what I mean is like being able to get on here and mix it up with everybody and chat and do the podcast is what made me become a Redskins fan to begin with. I grew up going to games with my uncle, who's actually on the board, Tom Skins fan. And the majority of what I remember and what was the most effective part of the game and what the most effective part of my memories and what made me love that so much, the game wasn't even the priority. It was the tailgate before the game. It was hanging out with the people that I had wanted to spend time with. It was the night before sitting, I mean, I was underage. I wasn't drinking, but I'm 14 years old.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Sitting at a bar at a hotel, like a hotel bar. It's not a bar, hotel bar with 30 other Redskin fans that are going to be going to the game the next day, just mixing it up and talking about what to expect and who we like and breaking down draft prospects and stuff. And I referenced Canton. Canton had nothing to do with Dan Snyder. It had nothing to do with football. It was about all the people that were there. It was about walking through a city that was 500 miles away from Washington, D.C. and seeing nothing but burgundy jerseys, being able to walk up to anybody, have any conversation, bond with them. That is what has been my fan base. And that is what has been my fanhood through all of this.
There's a reason, Derek, why the two most memorable events in the last 24 years, without question, were the rehiring of Joe Gibbs and Art Monk's Hall of Fame induction. Without question,
Right.
Those were the two biggest events. And I'm not going to talk about Sean Taylor's death, but those two events, the reason they were so huge is because they were the only living, breathing symbols of what we once were. And I don't think we even recognize that consciously. Why the hell did so many people go to that Hall of Fame thing for Art Monk?
We were
I know it's
desperate
overdue,
for
et cetera,
that.
but it was because those that was what we remember. That was the greatness of Washington football embodied in two individuals. And that's why both of those events were like, I mean, there was the biggest things that happened during the Dan Snyder tenure.
I was going back and forth with someone on Twitter, and I posed the question. I said, you go to bed tonight, you wake up with sports amnesia, okay? You don't have the history of fan base. And this was a couple months ago. You don't have the history. You wake up, and then tomorrow, somebody walks up to you and says, you need to pick a football team to root for. I guarantee you nobody's picking this franchise. And I can't argue against that fact. There's no chance in hell I would pick this franchise if I didn't have the 20 years before, you know, Dan really got his grips into the thing. So that enough right there tells you that whoever's still holding on, and I think it's going to come back with the fury. I think the impassioned fans and the everything is just going to come flying back to the point where I don't think they're even I don't think they even understand how hard and heavy it's going to come back. But the people who have stuck it out, I guess I'm one of them, but I tip my cap to everybody and say, you know what?
Yep.
Guess what, guys? We fucking made it, okay? Like, we made it. This is the day that we've all been looking for. It's the day we've all believed. The reason that we have continued to not absolutely just say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, was because we actually believe that this day could happen.
So I want to take us in a different direction to close out tonight, because I mean, it's been great hearing you guys. I think everyone has a unique take on Dan Snyder and like what we've been through and how we feel right now. But we're going to have new owners soon. And I'm just curious. I know we can't get too much into it. And there's so much unknown. Even the group that wins the bid is still unknown. And I don't want to bring that up tonight either. But in terms of what we want from the new ownership group, I would love to hear from you guys. Like, what are the priorities? Like, what are the big picture things that you feel like you need to see from the new ownership group to let us know that,
reconnect with the alumni?
It's a new day.
You got to reconnect with the alumni in a real way, not the pandering, you know, token alumni. No, you need to reconnect with the alumni. You need to have the first person that should get a phone call when the ink is dry. John Riggins. Rigo, you were pissed, brother. I get it. What's it going to take? How do we get you back? How do we get you back in this stadium? You know what I do if I'm Harris? Figure out what it's going to take to get him back, and I trot his house out to the 50-yard line at the first home game in full uniform, like he did when he said goodbye. Now, and I'm not talking about Commander's uniform. Put him in a Redskins uniform. Let him do the wave and the bow and say, you know what? We're here, okay? I mean, you want to make a statement?
I've been thinking about this for years, John. You know, what I would like to see. The timing is lousy. First of all, I think we should recognize, right? The timing is lousy for change. This is, you don't make significant change a week and a half, 10 days before the draft. This is not that time of year. You're not out looking for a new head coach. You can't replace your general manager. That's a pretty lousy draft move. So when I say what I want to see, this is what I want to see in the next 10 months. How about that? I want to see real football people, which is not to say that Ron Rivera is not a real football person, but I detest this whole general manager and coach wrapped up into one person. There are about 3 guys in the history of the league that have been successful doing that, and none of them are named Ron Rivera. I'm tired of that. I want to see legitimate football people running the football side of the operation. I think Ron has done an amazing job with the draft. I don't think we have been as proficient in free agency as we could have been. And we certainly haven't been as proficient in coaching some aspects of the team. And I expect to see some of that change this year with the changes Ron made. But what I really want to see is a football person running the football operation. The second thing I want to see in relative short order, not immediately, because these aren't the types of things that you announce immediately, but I want to at least hear them talk about it. And that's stadium ideas. You know, in generalities, right? We want to do X, Y, Z. As far as the stadium is concerned, we'd like to play in DC. We don't have to play in DC, you know, that type of thing. I would like to hear, you know, some type of plan. I'd like to know that there's a, you know, a positive thing coming in terms of the stadium. I, for one, have never been to FedEx Field. The only games I ever attended were in my aunt and uncle. They were the aunt and uncles that everybody has that aren't actually related to you by blood, right? Had season tickets in the upper deck in one of the end zone corners. And I went to a game a year on their tickets for a long time. And it was awesome, but I've never been to FedEx Field, and I may have to go now, but I would really like them to come out with a stadium plan fast enough that I don't have to go to FedEx Field. So I could say I was a Washington fan and never visited that dump, but you know, who knows? But yeah, that's what I'd like to see relatively quickly.
What I want to see is what I haven't seen for the last 24 years. And that's the sense that the ownership of my favorite sports franchise is interested in building a solid winning organization that starts at the top, in the sense of, do I get the sense, and we're not going to know the details of what they're doing, but we'll have a pretty good idea from listening to what they come out and say publicly and watching what they do, that they actually just do and manifests itself as we're watching on all fronts, on the stadium front, on what they're going to do with the practice facility, on how they're going to handle front office and personnel, how they're going to handle coaching, how they're going to bring in and reach out to alumni, how they're going to reach out to a fan base that is punch drunk and staggering. I would like to get the sense over, I don't know how long to give them to do this, but we'll get a sense as it happens. Is there a brain working up there? Is there a clear plan that makes sense and that is being articulated in a way that you can? We're not going to expect to hear all the inside shit from them, and we shouldn't, because they should learn to keep their mouths shut when their mouths should be shut, unlike what we've had. But the sense that when they do come out and say something, you can listen to them talk and go, okay, well, that actually doesn't sound like bullshit. I get that. And maybe that is heading towards this goal of building a team that from year to year, the machinery and the support structure and the foundation is in place where you can actually contend. It's hard to win championships in the NFL. You got to have the right combination of coaching and a quarterback. And
the Steelers are relevant every single year.
They are, because the organization is solid, and that didn't happen overnight. I mean, they were awful for a long time. I'm old enough to remember, but that is what we have not seen under the Dan Snyder regime. It was haphazard. It was throwing darts at the dartboard and bringing in Jeff George and Dion and Bruce Smith and Jeff Hainsworth and playing fantasy football. And as we found out over the years, it was also, oh, by the way, I'm going to maybe keep 2 sets of books and I'm going to play fast and loose with the rules. And you know what? If we want to take inappropriate pictures of the cheerleaders, well, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you know, I'm sure that's okay because I'm the boss. That has just been really hard to watch and to stomach. And all of that has to be wrapped up. I mean, whoever, we're assuming it's Harris and Rails and Magic and all that, they've got a huge order ahead of them, and they can't be expected to do it all at once, but they can be expected to understand that guys like us and maybe potentially young fans who might be brought back in, and investors and advertisers, need to get the sense that we've got some grown-ups in charge, and that they actually seem to have the best interests of the Washington Commanders and their fans in mind. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm going to know it when I see it. And I suspect we're all going to have a pretty good idea if they're doing it or not. I mean, give them a year to start to get that feeling whether.
Well, one of the nice things that Bob alluded to was the awkward timing, but in a way it's a blessing because they can only move so quick with the timing of it, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna, whether or not they would be inclined to come in and sweep house, and with massive change, which might, unsettle people, they're gonna have time to kind of like assess, and whether or not it's a deliberate, reasoned decision making.
And they have to juggle they have to juggle all those balls. It's not just one, it's not just personnel, it's not just the stadium, it's not just the practice facility. There's got to be an overall plan that we can start to get the sense that they actually seem to have a plan in what they're doing, and it makes sense.
What are you looking for, Andrew? The first.
So I'm going to start by circling back, because when we were talking about the Art Monk Hall of Fame induction, it wasn't for me so much that we all came to celebrate this great moment. I think it was that we all came to celebrate a wrong being righted. Because there were so many years where Monk should have been inducted, that he was overlooked and that he was purposefully slighted. And I think about that in terms of what this ownership has done to the fan base. How many years we as fans and the team and the coaches and the staff have been slighted. And so what I actually want for this first year is for them to get the easy stuff right. If you're going to do a homage to Sean Taylor, don't get a H&M mannequin and stick a jersey on it.
Yeah.
That's a jersey that he wasn't in. If you're going to honor former players, spell their names right.
Yep.
If you're going to do
porta-potty pictures, no porta-potty pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, there are lots of little details. And in every aspect of our lives, we know the little details lead to big things. Get the little details right. Art Monk was a fantastic, one of the NFL's best receivers, because he got the little details right off the field in practice, on the field during the games. The owners need to get the little details right. They need to do the easy stuff right. We've been getting all the easy stuff wrong. And I think that's something we can do this first year.
Don't you think? I even think that if we had not had Dan Snyder, if we'd had Art Modell as our owner, not Dan Snyder, do you think that Art Monk would have not gone into the Hall of Fame like right at the appropriate time?
Absolutely.
I think there's a ton of things you can.
I don't think that was Dan.
I don't know that it's necessarily just Dan Snyder. To this point.
The point is,
there's no advocating for the players. Why is nobody in Washington screaming about the fact that Brian Mitchell's not in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, or Joe Jacoby.
Right.
But I think it all is part of the Snyder era, man. We're the whipping boy for the NFL. We're the ones that semi-violate a kind of rule and get fined a gazillion draft picks and money, because even though it wasn't even really an established rule, we're the ones that, anything that Washington ever did during the Snyder tenure, we got hammered for. Our schedule, look at our schedule in some of those horrific seasons, and then we come back and we're playing the NFL's second or third hardest schedule over and over and over again.
Not only that, the timing of it. There was one season not that long ago that we played like 4 teams that were coming off of bye weeks.
Yeah.
I
They
think
made
the
it. They made us
NFL
play a COVID game where like 2/3 of our roster was out on with COVID. I mean, they literally like forced us to play a bunch of people we signed off the street. I mean,
I think the NFL regretted signing off on Dan Snyder within the first 2 years of Snyder's ownership. My guess is he walked into the very first meeting and pissed off half the ownership.
probably.
You know, and probably his only friend for the longest time was Jerry Jones, who, oh, by the way, has pissed off the other half of the
Yeah,
ownership.
he's
I
next.
mean,
Jerry Jones is next.
Or Bidwell. Bidwell might be next.
I think Jerry dies owning the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I have to, but a lot of my Cowboy fan friends would love for Jerry to be next. I can tell you that. He's almost as well loved in Dallas as Dan was in Washington.
So what do we want from the new ownership group, guys? What do we want?
So I'll chime in on this one, John. And I'll keep it pretty short and sweet. When you initially posed the question, the word that came to mind for me immediately was the word authenticity. And to me, Dan Snyder has always portrayed or pretended that he cared about the team. He obviously didn't really care about the team. Dan Snyder has always portrayed or given the illusion that he wanted to win. He never wanted to win. He never wanted to truly win. If he did want to, he would have stopped sabotaging things so many times. To me, authenticity is the first step towards healing. And let's face it, there's a ton of healing that needs to be done within this organization, and especially in regards to the relationship with the fans. You know, as a fan of a football team, you take pride in winning, but I think you take just as much pride in cheering for something that carries itself with integrity and authenticity. And I want to see signs that this ownership group is showing that sense of authenticity and integrity. I think that's a huge part of reinstilling some faith with this fan base and trust as well.
Awesome.
You got
Chris,
to
what
wish.
do you want to see, man?
Yeah.
I would like to volunteer my time back. I don't think there's anything that can add on top of the rest of you. But if
Not free beer.
if I may, I would like to take 2 minutes to change the topic. Unless you're done. If you want to continue with this topic at the end, I'll come back in.
Nah, bring it on.
There's no doubt in my mind that money pressure, meaningful money pressure, has played a large role in what's happening now and allowing us to feel what we feel. But I don't want to forget, and I want to salute the women that came forward, the brave women that came forward, because I honestly believe we wouldn't be here today if that had not happened.
100%.
No, you're absolutely right.
Megan Ember, Melanie
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Coburn, Emily Applegate, and there's probably 20 other names on that list.
He would have
cannot-
snaked his way out of everything
Yep.
else. He couldn't snake his way out of that.
Yeah.
And they
for-
held on. They didn't just come forward. They
They were bulldogs, man. Those women they were everything Dan Snyder's never been. Courageous, persistent, confident, determined. Everything that Dan Snyder, the little sniveling guy that's been our owner for 24 years, they have all those attributes in spades. And I think you're totally right. And I want to thank you guys, because I can tell you it hasn't been very gratifying on social media. And I think probably Andrew knows what I'm talking about, because there's a lot of fans out there that they just wanted to compartmentalize. And I totally understand. I'm not beating on those people, but they wanted to totally compartmentalize. I just want to root for the football. But there reaches a point where you can't just shut your eyes to what the truth is and how people are treated and feel good about and just root for the football. You just can't do it. And I know I feel, and I'm not saying we had anything to do with it, but we've been very vocal as a website that we don't support Dan Snyder, and that, the people that say nothing's going to change, shut up, stop talking about it, Snyder's never going to sell a team. The NFL is never going to do anything. Those people were all dead wrong. And to Chris's point, the reason they were wrong is because when people that have courage and who will not be told to shut up continue to speak out, good things happen. That's how change happens. And I hope the people that said, shut up, I don't want to hear about this, you're ruining my experience on Twitter or Facebook. I hope they at least internally have thought, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should speak out more, because you're exactly right. It wasn't for those. And those women are no longer, those women have not been associated with that franchise for 5-10 years, more in some cases. They had nothing to gain, and everything to lose. I mean, it takes a lot of balls. Every time we post something negative about Dan Snyder, including the blog I posted 2 days ago, I'm like, am I going to get sued? Am I going to get a cease and desist letter? Or, I mean, I think about that even now. So those women are ballsy as hell. And not just the women, a lot of men came forward. The guy that came forward and said, yes, I helped edit the cheerleading video. That guy's a fucking hero.
Mm-hmm.
I follow a lot of those women on social media, and I'll tell you what, the NFL needs to be concerned, because this isn't the end for them.
Yeah, they're not done yet.
They're not done. They wanted Snyder out, but that's not the end game for them.
Oh,
The
now
end
they're
game
pointing
for them
their,
are the reports, and they still want the reports out. Megan Ember tags every single tweet, #release the report, and she has not stopped the last 2 days. It's not changing. They're not going away.
And it's not just Washington. We're not the only franchise with
they're going after
executives
Goodell at this point.
Dan may be walking away with 6.05 billion or whatever it's going to be after he pays off the other owners and the loan and whatever else he owes and tax
Divorce when it happens.
You know what else he's going to be spending a nice chunk of that profit on is legal bills. That man is going to be spending money on lawyers defending himself from lawsuits from here until the end of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, he's walking away with a big chunk of money, but his life, he's going to earn himself a dark place. And I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of fun for the rest of his life.
Fortunately,
it's not going to stop.
Fortunately, our practice facilities and our stadium and our training staff and all the rest of that hasn't gotten shit for funding, but I'm pretty sure Dan Snyder's personal attorneys have been well taken care of over the years. So at least, we can sleep easy at night knowing he's going to be well covered on that front.
Well, on that level,
but I'll be surprised if he's not served divorce papers within 48 hours after he signs that sale agreement.
On that level, isn't it interesting that it ends with Dan Snyder imposing an exile on himself? He's fled the country.
Oh, he's a coward, man. I mean, he's a total coward. And I don't know, I'm sure you guys have seen in the last 24 hours, a lot of reporters have been posting a video clip of right after he won the bid when he originally bought the team and his original comments and let me tell you, for 24 years, all we've heard is he's not a good public speaker. He doesn't like talking. He's not good with the reporters. That guy was slick as hell. He looked like Tucker Carlson on Fox News. He was spinning and glad handing and charming. There's nothing wrong with Dan Snyder. Dan Snyder can talk to people and is fully capable of like defending himself and stating, speaking for himself. He just chose not to for 24 years because he just didn't want to. He didn't give a fuck. He was going to do what he was going to do. He didn't care what the ramifications were because he was going to win no matter what. And that's who he is, man. But
that's funny. I've always had a different take on him. I thought he was almost painful to listen to when he would try to talk.
Yeah, after that initial incoming, watch the clip. Boone's right. John is 100% right. When he was talking in that first interview, he was very relatable. He was saying exactly what you wanted, what all of us would be saying if we had just bought a team. He was, dare I say, almost personable. You watched it, and then he 2 months later he runs out Charlie Casserly, who still wins general front office player man of the year that year. And just that's when nukes start coming out, you know.
I think he quickly figured out, if I don't talk, I can't be held accountable.
I can't be able to,
I can't be asked hard questions. I don't have to give any rationale for why I'm making the insane decisions I'm making.
That's
And
fair.
so he just opted out.
That's
I,
fair.
I think Dan is a much better actor than perhaps we have ever given him credit for. If the reports of what he is like in private are even vaguely correct, he puts on a really good public face, even when he's not talking. You know, he is apparently the consummate dick with ears in private. And yet in public, he looks like a fairly reasonable business guy, ready to sit down and talk logic, and he's given a couple of solid interviews. I think that first interview, John, like you called out, is probably as close to the real Dan Snyder as far as public persona as we've ever seen. And ever since then, he's been worried about getting hammered with the hard question, and then having a follow-up after whatever answer he used gets scrutinized, and then the team screws it up, and he has to answer the question about the question he answered 3 months ago. And he learned very quickly to keep his mouth shut. And he learned very quickly to put on a pretty face and wear a nice suit and put that wife on his arm and show everybody what they expect to see for an NFL owner. And in private, he's Dan Snyder.
I think Chris made the point of the pod. Just give him props, because when he made the statement through his mouthpiece that you're all a bunch of haters and I'm walking away with $6 billion, that's the real Dan Snyder. That's quintessential Snyder, and he hasn't changed in 24 fucking years. He has no regrets. He hasn't learned anything, and he's going out the way he came in. Period. That's it. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. One more thing I'd like to say to you guys and to anyone who's still listening to this. And John, you've been saying this for a while, and it resonated with me from the first time you did, that this has been like an abusive relationship. Washington football fans with their football team and their owner. I was in a relationship that ended badly, and it left some scars. It's an impossible thing to get through with all of your dignity intact. But what I've learned in going through it is that there's going to be a temptation for us and for other Redskins fans to say, okay, close the book, Snyder's gone, we're done, let's move forward. And that's not the way it's going to be. And the way it's going to be is what happens when you're trying to get out of a bad relationship on something that you really care about, is that you're going to keep talking about it until you don't have to talk about it anymore. You're going to think you're done with it, and then something's going to come up and you're going to find that shit bubbling up and you're going to have to get it off your chest again. And the good news is that as time goes by, that happens less and less often. That's real healing. Scarring is slow, scabbing is slow, but it does happen. And I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to be realistic about transitioning from this just fucking awful place that this team that we care about has been for a long time, and our personal fandoms we carry with us. The healing, it can happen, but it's going to take time, and we're going to have to be grown-ups about it and work our way through it. So I apologize in advance for future podcasts when I all of a sudden start talking about something that we thought we were done with.
So what you're saying is, every time we go on a podcast and you say, damn it, that was a bad decision, we can look at you and say, well, at least it wasn't Snyder that made it.
Until you don't need to say that anymore. Yes.
I think we'll know the page is finally turned when we never talk about that little son of a bitch at all.
Someday it'll happen.
He's just an unfortunate footnote.
So we have come into this podcast relating to the last 24 years. There's been a lot of, I don't want to call it negativity, but there's been a lot of negativity that we've been talking about on a day that should be pretty damn joyous, actually. So, you said, what do we want to see from the next owner? I would love to end this podcast with just something positive. Can we find a way to get some positivity to end this night as we go forward, knowing that little shit isn't our owner anymore?
I want the fans to be center stage, man. And I'll just give one example. And I'm not saying, if we're the Commanders forever, you know what? Fucking let's go Commanders. I'll embrace it and I'll move forward. But I think I'm just using that as an example because I think it's pretty clear that the bulk of the fan base doesn't like that name. It was kind of a desperate attempt to offend nobody and neither excite nor offend anybody. And no fans don't like it. They don't want it. And
truth is that they always knew it was going to be Commanders. We went through 2 years of dog and pony shows.
Ignored all of the more popular fan choices and they made excuses for why
I don't think those were. I don't think those were legitimate polls anyway. I think they already knew it was going to be Commanders. So that was the show.
I'm only using that as an example.
I know,
but I want them to listen to the fan base, and the whole idea of like, well, social media is only a part of it. Well, then ask you have season ticket holders. You know where they live. You have their phone numbers and emails. Poll them. Let them pick the name. Let them, whatever it is. I think they really need to stop. And this is where I'm not a Jason Wright fan. You need to listen to your customers. And again, go out to the Danaher website because a core value of one of our new owners is that you listen to your customers. Like that is job one. Listen to your customers. They haven't done that for 24 years. They haven't done it.
They only care about having your address to send you a bill right now, right, John? That's
it could be different. It could be better.
You guys wanted a positive note. So for any of you guys who've been at a workplace that's been a difficult workplace, you know that how that seeps into your morale and how eventually it affects your productivity. I have to imagine that was true with the Commanders last year, in the last 2-3 years, that just always being under the shadow of this controversy and having to answer to this controversy, whether it was COVID, whether it was the cheerleaders, whether it was whatever it was, has always sort of been weighing on the back of their minds and then came out in little ways on the field, whether it's depressing that little hustle. I think now that is potentially gone, that some of those questions have been eliminated and that they can really actually focus on football. And we look at the talent that we do have on the team. We look at the McLaurins. We look at Robinson. We look at, I'm going to include Gibson, and we look at Dotson, and we look at the people we have on defense.
Defense in the first round. Yeah, that too.
Yeah. We could actually see a good team because they don't have to overcome all the psychological hurdles. They can just enjoy the game. They can just play the game.
They might be playing in front of a stadium with a majority of home fans. I mean, there's a lot of things that could flip quickly.
Or at least a stadium full of fans not looking for a moment to boo them.
Or boo the owner.
Or boo the owner.
I mean, I took a stab at the stadium earlier, but I'll tell you what, if I had the opportunity, if we could work it out and do a BGO game again.
Well, we can do it, brother.
I would do. I would. I'm making no promises about showing up because I've done that and screwed it up in the past. But it would absolutely positively be something that I would have to think long and hard about showing up for. And because I kind of want to celebrate that we kind of have it back. At least I'm assuming we have it back. Until I see signs that we don't, I'm going to assume we have a team again. And I'm kind of, there's your bright spot, John. I am assuming we have a team again. I'm kind of excited
think-
about that.
I don't think there's anything but positive, man. We're going forward. I mean, I think it is hard to like flip the switch and go from where we've been for all this time to accepting that like things can be different. So, and I was kind of like, I don't know if it was Chris that said it, but I've been kind of like strangely unemotional the last 2 days. And I think it's just because I've spent the last 10 years, especially just spinning. I mean, almost continually spinning about my team. And now it's just relief. It's really, I can't muster joy yet. I will.
Well, to that point, John, this I mean, we were in the final moments of this board
Yep.
not that long ago. Like to the point
Twice,
where
Derek, twice.
to the point where this board, like the lights were going to get turned off for the last time.
How many emails, John, Mark, how many emails have the three of us swapped
I
back and
got,
forth
I got
about this?
cease and
This is gonna be
desist
it.
notice from Google, from Gmail.
You know, this is going to be it. We're done. Yeah.
But what kept us from shutting it down?
Hope.
No,
No,
you
friendship.
guys, our
Oh,
friendship
friendship.
and the guys, our fellow fans, guys like Chris and Andrew and Paul and Bob and Derek, who and Mark, who refused to give up. You know, I mean, I don't want to make it too ridiculously sentimental, but I mean, that's what the fans that are still with this team.
John, you're not making it sense. We were on the doorsteps. You messaged me and said, "Hey, Derek, I appreciate what you've done for the board," because it was right after I came on staff. The words were, "I appreciate what you've done for the board and everything, but I just want to let you know, 30 days we're pulling the plug." Like that was legitimately a message you sent me.
You did that bad a job that he was going to close the whole thing
Well,
down.
it was all me, buddy. Like I did everything I
Just
could
think
do to
it's hard,
nuke
you know,
this thing.
It's been hard. It's been hard to keep the faith, and but I think a lot more fans have kept the faith.
I
I've
could have
heard
walked
that a
away from
lot.
this team a half dozen times in the last 10 years, but I couldn't walk away from the people I'm on this call with.
Yep.
Well, that was pretty close, guys. Derek, you wanted something positive. So, I mean, I always take it upon myself to try to go all philosophical, and I recognize that about myself, and I'm sorry. But 6 months ago, at least a couple of you said this already on the pod, that you thought, as I did, I shared this, that for the rest of my adult conscious life,
Yep.
Dan Snyder would own my football team, and that the best I was going to be able to hope for were the occasional seasons where we didn't embarrass ourselves on the field, and that the rest of it was just going to be an ongoing series of bad things. So what this has done for me, and I mean, I was in a dark place about this team 6 months ago. So I've had that time since the first announcement came out about Bank of America. I've hired them on to consult. So it hasn't been an overnight thing, but it's kind of been for me like I don't know how often you guys get up and watch the sun come up on the beach. I try to do that at least once a year when I go to the beach. I get up well before dawn when it's still pretty fucking dark out, and I just stand and watch where the sun's going to come up. And it's not just about when the sun gloriously bursts up, it's watching everything slowly brighten. You know what I mean? That I spent 6 months watching the horizon on the East Coast brighten up a little bit. And it almost feels to me, and I'm almost ready to buy in again, that, you know, if you wait, sometimes the bad shit actually ends and the sun does actually come up, and maybe we can have some fun in a new day. So I'm ready. I mean, I'm ready for it.
I think there hasn't been anything, any segment having to do with this football team that hasn't experienced deterioration over the years. BGObsession.com included. There are many people that were very active and that I would consider online friends that just disappeared. And hopefully now, if you're watching, hopefully now it's time to come back.
It is
You can
tough.
hold your head up now, and you can come back and join the fun and build, help build everything back along with the football team.
Yeah, and we all have to commit to being more to like letting it go. We're in the catharsis period right now, but we got to let it go and recognize that the future can be better. It's gonna be better. Even in Canada, Paul.
Absolutely. Yes. I just want to like close my thoughts with one thing. I'm pretty active in the BGO chats on Sundays, as some of you are as well. And one of the things that I often say in chat when we're just experiencing a horrendous football game, before I sign off, I often say to you all, you are all great fans and you all deserve better. Yesterday, you all got what you deserved, so I just want to congratulate all of you.
Paul,
time
you
to
almost made me
celebrate.
cry right there, buddy.
Back at you, brother, and thanks for
Paul does
staying
say
in.
that at the end of every chat. Thank God for him, because chat has been like hell for the last 10 years.
It's
but
been rough.
on most Sundays on our game.
I'm afraid to even peek in there.
It's been rough at times.
Yeah.
I'm too much of a writer.
It's trash, It's like, oh, okay.
So
Oh.
I want to close with Andrew by thanking him for coming on, and we almost gave you a couple minutes to get your words in there. It's always a challenge on our podcast because we all have a lot to say. But let us know, where can folks find you on social media, and where can we find Pitter Patty, man? Because we all want to buy that book.
Well, that would be awesome. So Pitter Patty Finds Another Day, my little rain cloud children's book. It will be on Amazon. It will be at Barnes and Noble and BAM. If you want to buy it directly from the publisher, it's at dreampunkpress.com. So I'll say it a little slower. Dreampunk, DREAMPUNK, press.com.
We'll
And
post it in the thread that
Yeah,
has.
I got a link. I'm looking at the page now. We'll link it to the YouTube page and we'll link it in the thread.
and just to be a little indulgent, so in the business, before your book comes out, there's something called NetGalley. And NetGalley is the one where all the professional reviewers and whatnot get to a preview of the book and get to read it, and they send that off to the bookstores and brick and mortar. And I've been really pleased. It's right now at 4.5 stars with all the professional reviewers.
So is that like can we go there and give it a review or give you 5 stars or?
You probably could. That's netgalley.com. You'll have to sign up as a reviewer. I think they want some things, but I don't think the hurdle's too hard to pass.
We got you. Well, I hope Pitter Patty finds her silver lining, just like all Washington football fans find.
We all need
we're
to
not looking for a silver
Rain
lining
for
anymore.
24
brother.
years. I'm going to tie this up in a beautiful little bow, burgundy and gold bow. For 24 years, we've been saying, rain, rain, go away, come again some other day. And like Pitter Patty, we're finally going to
This guy
where it's like
wax poetic at his.
Wow.
We're gonna reach that other day.
We
We're
don't
gonna
need
see
it. We don't
things
need silver
bloom,
linings anymore.
That's
Danny
right, man.
Snyder's gone.
and
that is perfect.
yeah. Well,
All
thank
right.
you guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're always welcome, man. Anytime.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Every 24 years like clockwork, brother.
Yeah.
Deal.
Farewell, boys.
Night.
All right.